Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another weekend edition here of the PondCast. The PondCast episode number 98, your weekly dose of all things StarCraft. I'm, of course, your VIP. With me, I'm joined by the lovely producer in the chat, or producer behind the scenes, Kura, and also had lovely people in the chat as well. Welcome, one and all. Welcome to our weekly talk show where we talk all things StarCraft and all things StarCraft adjacent as well. And there is a lot to get into. It's been a pretty intense week and intense couple of days in regards to StarCraft. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, before we get into all the patch notes and what has been happening with the live version of the game, we can discuss the David Kim interview. Let's go. Let us go. So up first, of course, Hearthstone. Last week, he did actually have the Tim Morton interview, if you recall. Tim Morton, of course, was a big part of StarCraft, of Legacy of the Void, and then, of course, it switched over to Frost Giant, helped founded it alongside working on Stormgate as well. Meanwhile, a week later, we do have the interview with David Kim, of course, a massive part of StarCraft history, a legend himself, holding a legacy behind him in regards to StarCraft balance, StarCraft memes as well, for sure. Very, very much so, and was an integral part of StarCraft for the majority of its lifespan. So it was crazy to see suddenly out of the woodwork David Kim come out for an interview. Of course, in recent times we knew that David Kim was working on Battle Aces, which in the end was cancelled. In the end, did not go live, and is now working on another game entirely, another RTS-esque game. So again, shout out to Hearthstone for conducting the interview. Honestly, once again, I do think that Hearthstone's a very good interviewer. It was a very different vibe, I should say. When it comes to Tim Morton, it was a little bit more adversarial. We saw that Hearthstone was more often than not kind of pressing for some answers, and especially in the first half of the interview with Tim Morton, we did notice that it was very much so a lot of like PR answers, and there wasn't really much depth to it, and it was a little bit more defensive overall. Still was able to get some value out of it, especially in the second half of the interview, but it was a very different vibe. Here, with David Kim, it was very different. As David Kim, he was very open, he was much more humble as well, and he very much so was excited to talk about everything. Like there was nothing that was really that he would necessarily hold back, bar a couple of little things here and there in regards to maybe some specifics when it comes to certain comments made or certain decisions made as well. But overall, it was a very different vibe, and even though the interview lasted over 2 hours, I feel like we could have gone further. I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like those 2 hours kind of flew by, and would love to have heard more from old mate David. So big shout out to David Kim for being a part of the interview, and a big shout out to Hearthstone as well for hosting. When it comes to the interview itself, again, if you're maybe a little bit newer to StarCraft and not familiar, David Kim, he was a part of the StarCraft dev team from almost the beginning. I think he spoke about it, how he was working on StarCraft 2, 2 years into development, still, of course, pre-launch of Wings of Liberty. And it was really cool to hear a side of David Kim, which I myself was unfamiliar with. When it comes to David Kim himself, of course, yeah, that was part of the StarCraft community back in Heart of the Swarm and Wings of Liberty, and David Kim, well, he was known as, of course, the balance designer for the game for a long time before taking a stronger and more senior role when it comes to game direction for StarCraft. And he was the face of balance. He was the face of all the balance patches as well. And as a result, he would often get a lot of attention, a lot of criticism, a lot of hates as well, because when you put your face to something, then you are also the one to blame for everything as well. When things go right, when things go well, you often don't quite get credit for it either. We spoke about this previously in the last week when it comes to Hearthstone's interview with Tim Morton, as they were also talking about again, certain extreme reactions on the internet, and getting hate mail and getting threats, and being being threatened with like your own home address and things of that nature. And David Kim was always someone that was like the peak and pinnacle of that, of like peak and pinnacle of hate being directed to, I should say. The interview didn't really focus too much on that aspect, a little bit, but not too much. It was an interesting kind of angle to things when it comes to the perspective that David Kim had. Nowadays, I feel like David Kim is looked at a little bit more fondly, but that's mainly more because back when he was in charge of things, one, there was a face to all the balance, and two, there was also kind of a little bit more direction when it comes to how the game was headed and where it was headed as well. And David, he does kind of illuminate and does delve a little bit more into that side of things. I mentioned earlier that this was a much more humble interview, and what I appreciate the most is that he does admit fault. He does admit mistakes when it comes to certain decisions that were made, and certain kind of philosophies that the team had at the time at Blizzard when it comes to game balance and game direction. So it was really cool to hear from that side of things. It was really cool to hear these little stories about him like sitting down with David Bauer. No, I can't quite recall the name, but some higher ups over at Blizzard, his mentor even at the time at Blizzard, talking about some issues with the game and then coming to agreement like, oh, like, yeah, things aren't quite going too well here, and things are looking a little bit brutal. So it was really cool to hear from that side of things as well, and to hear from that kind of like internal dialogue that was going on about how their initial approach was at Blizzard, how they were very much so, I don't know if I want to say elitist, but like they felt like they knew better. Then at a certain point, coming into Legacy of the Void, that direction changed quite a bit when they recognized that even if, like, quote unquote, something was balanced or something was like statistically like, good for the game, that doesn't mean that it was fun, or that doesn't mean it was being enjoyed, or that doesn't mean the perception was positive for that aspect of the game itself. That's in reference to like Broodlord Infestor, to Swarm Host, and to other aspects as well. So again, it's really cool here. Something that I didn't expect, and I kind of veered off track when it comes to David Kim as a person. Something that I was not aware of, because again, to me, he was more of just the face of balance at Blizzard. Was that apparently he competed in Warcraft 3, he competed in Brood War as well. When he was much younger, of course, pre being brought into game development or game design of any kind. So it's really cool to hear from David Kim, talking about his time in Canada. I think it was in Toronto, Vancouver. That's it. Time in Vancouver, and eventually, getting brought on to work on Relic and THQ, to work on Dawn of War, the Dawn of War series, before eventually having the opportunity to actually work at Blizzard in StarCraft as well. So it was very fascinating to hear some of the backstory that we were otherwise unaware of. Likewise, again, he was speaking about his experiences when it comes to game development itself, when it comes to their direction, when it comes to how they change things. It was also really cool to hear some of the internal, I don't want to say politics, but just things were happening internally at the time. He was talking about how when it came to Legacy of the Void, very much so the team was made aware that post-launch they would have 1 year to work on the game before the game would basically go into like hibernation mode, and they'd have to like move on to other things. Something that I found very fascinating was the idea that he was working on Warcraft 3. That was news to me. The fact that he was working on Warcraft 3, I say working on Warcraft 3. He had a very, very small team. I think it was a team of 3 or team of 4, like 3 to 4 people that were working on like a prototype, like pitch idea for Warcraft 3. After they had finished working on StarCraft 2, and eventually got turned down. He didn't go into specifics as to the rationale as to why it was turned down. He alluded to the fact that at the time mobile gaming was getting really popular, and they were made aware as to why Warcraft 4 would be something that Blizzard did not want to pursue any further. I think that was maybe I think he was maybe alluding to Diablo Immortal, like the fact that he emphasized mobile gaming, and we know that this was also back in 2016, and it was 2 years later in 2018 that Diablo Immortal was announced. I would imagine that there's maybe a connection there. I'm making that connection. I don't have 100% certainty, but that's the game that I'm thinking of that was announced at the time, around this era, outside of obviously, Overwatch was already being worked on. Well, that was already a separate thing that was being worked on, and Diablo 4 took a much longer time to really get going. At the time, they were still wrapping up Diablo 3, if you recall, before eventually moving on to Diablo 4, which David Kim was very vocal about. So I think that might have been Diablo Immortal actually that may have pushed Warcraft 4 aside, or maybe another internal game that never saw the light of day. Right, that's another possibility that they worked on something, it eventually got scrapped and never quite shone through. But it was fascinating, right? It was fascinating to hear about the potential Warcraft 4 that was being worked upon. You mean Warcraft 4 or StarCraft? Sorry, I might have misspoken. But yes, I'm just say Warcraft 4. I don't know if I said Warcraft 3. But yeah, he was working on a Warcraft 4, which was really cool to hear. Very fascinating to hear, I should say, from the side of David. And then once it was made clear that there would not be a future RTS, and after he was having some issues working on Diablo 4, then he went on to work on Battle Aces, of course. It would have been nice to have heard a little bit more details as of that time in Blizzard. I mean, we already know like the majority of what was going on. We didn't know the majority of what was going on in regards to just the direction of Blizzard, of Activision Blizzard at the time, how they were very much so profit focused and profit hungry, and that kind of surpassed everything else. That's what we heard from Jeff Kaplan when it comes to his interview in regards to conversations he had with CEOs and higher ups in regards to even Overwatch and how that was doing, and how he was, there was a lot of pressure being put on him for Overwatch 2, for example, and things of that nature. So there was just a lot of internal struggles or just turmoil that was going on at Blizzard in that era, and now we hear a little bit from David Kim as well. It's interesting that we're getting all these like interviews like around the same time. Jeff Kaplan, David Kim, and I guess earlier Tim Morton as well, from these ex like Blizzard like semi higher ups. So yeah, it is fascinating to just kind of like piece it all together here as to how the environment was like back then. And again, like David Kim, like he very much so seemed very excited to just talk and discuss and get into everything. He sounded even now very passionate about his approach to the game, to StarCraft, to all things Blizzard even as well, despite even leaving the company. Yeah, it was something that I did appreciate. And as I mentioned, like I kind of wish we got more. Like I appreciate the interview. Big shout out to Hearthstone. I don't know if Kura, I don't know if you listened to the interview. I don't know if you had anything specific that you wanted to bring up, as it was relatively lengthy.
I mean, yeah, I did listen to it. I think I would just echo what you said, that it was very clear that this is someone who's like very passionate about design, and like he's not like, a manager, like a person. No, he's just straight up design. Like his entire thing is designing things, and you can tell he's excited about designing things. Like sometimes like Hearthstone would ask a question and he would just keep talking for like minutes, and then he would like just arrive at like completely different topic. It's like, hold on, I didn't answer the question. Then he would go back and like actually start talking about it. It's like you can see that like this is something he's like genuinely interested in.
Yeah, did notice that happen a couple of times, and that's what you mentioned at the beginning, I guess, is that the vibe of this interview was very different to the Tim Morton one, where that was like a little bit more like corporate speak at times, and a little bit more reserved, and again a little bit more defensive of work created and things that were done. So very different vibe. And yeah, I did appreciate David King opening up the way that he did, and again, like I definitely got the sense that if they could probably talk for another 2 hours. Like
they probably would. But also something I guess that you didn't quite mention was that they talked a bit about his new game and how they decided because of how things like. Okay, let me phrase it. They specifically mentioned what was the difference between working at Blizzard to working at Tencent to working right now on their new project. Where like in Blizzard, they were a team in a company, and like there was that, and and various like members would work in different teams. And like for example, he specifically mentioned that for testing, for like beta testing for the game, he would get like people from like different parts of the company who weren't necessarily working on StarCraft, because they would have a different view on the game, right? So for example, he said that like for a long time he had someone from the cinematics team working testing the game, for example. So there's that. Then they talked about Tencent, where they were like basically a studio under Tencent, which meant the way it worked, like he said that basically they didn't have like a specific budget set. If he wanted to hire something, he was just hiring something. Like there was no like that kind of limit. But the downside of it is that Tencent has like full control. So if they want to shut down the game, they shut down the game, which they did. So that was like the trade-off there. And now he went to like making his own completely like separate team, separate like dev team, and it's like 4 people, 5 people. He literally said 4.5 because one guy is part-time. So he said that like his team is essentially 4.5, and they are just making a project in this like very very small team where like everybody just has a specific topic that they are very good at, and that's just what they're doing, and apparently it's actually going well.
Yeah. I think it's important to bring up as well that that we spoke about working for Tencent. I think what I found really cool was that he did mention that like even though Battle Aces was canceled, like he and his team enjoyed the experience and they have like nothing but positive things to say about it as well.
I
That they
think,
felt like satisfied about the work that they did and they enjoyed working together and forming that bond
yeah.
and even if like the product that they were working on doesn't meet the light of day, like they were still internally successful when it comes to like the work that they had done
Yeah,
and what they were able to achieve.
he specifically mentioned that like he thinks at least that the reason why people were so positive even after the game did end up launching was because from the very beginning they knew exactly what they want to do. Like there was like a very clear direction in how the game is supposed to work. Like not this is like he said that like the problems that arose were mostly from like the other factors, like you know the monetization and stuff like things that are outside of the game mechanics essentially, and like but the game itself like from the beginning had a very clear direction, so like everybody knew what they were doing, like what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, and it was definitely cool to hear his kind of growth as a designer as well. Like he spoke about how looking back on it, there are things that he would have done differently, that he wants to do differently here as well. Like I think he spoke about how for Battle Aces, he was too afraid. They were too afraid to make it user friendly. They were too afraid to lower the skill floor to make it more accessible, just because they didn't want to like anger any like RTS purists or upset like a certain segment of the community or a certain kind of like a certain consumer base. And he was like, yeah, like I was afraid to do that, but like now like I know that was like a mistake that we made, and coming into the new game he's working on, like he wants the floor to be much lower, but he does of course still want there to be a lot more skill expression. That's another thing that he said about Battle Aces that was some regrets, is that the skill ceiling was too low as well. Like it had a higher floor and a lower ceiling, so there wasn't too much skill expression compared to what he would want in Battle Aces, and he actually believed at the end of it, he believed that he did it, as a game it didn't really have much longevity because of that either, because there wasn't enough of a distinguishing factor between like the high-end pro and like a good player. Like the gap there in skill was much smaller, and he wants to widen that gap. He wants to allow for more skill expression, but also make it very accessible as well, which is very ambitious. Like I feel like that's what everyone wants to achieve at the end of the day. It's a very ambitious goal, but like he's now like kind of like set different different kind of goals for himself and for his team and what they want out of the new game that they're working on, which is interesting to hear, interesting to see. And again, I do wish him the best. Do wish him the best when it comes to David Kim and his project and his game. I know they've been very transparent about it. As you mentioned, the progress has been going quite quickly, and a big reason for that is, from my understanding, is just because of the experience that these team members have and how much more efficient they've gotten over time and how much more clinical they've gotten, and they're just able to work that much faster in this new environment. And yeah, wish them the best.
Something that he emphasized about the small team in general was that what's very important is not the number of people you have, but the fact that you have a specialist in certain thing. Because if you have the specialist, like if they need help, like you can get more people to help, but like they know like what needs to be done. So like he doesn't know much about like, I don't know, art or something, but they have a person who's like specifically like doing everything about art. So like, you know, you have like each like, for example, he was saying they have like apparently a really good person that's doing like server stuff, like, you know, connection management. Like apparently people were praising Battle Aces for like, you know, how smooth the game works, and he said that's all this one person, like he doesn't understand it, like that's not his job, but that person knows everything about the servers. Like they have a specialist for every task essentially.
Yeah, and again, do wish them the best when it comes to the future game that they're going to be working on. I know we're all going to be excited just because I know that Battle Aces was well received, and if we can see something of that level of quality, if not even greater, then again, there's a lot of potential there. Obviously, the downside of having a smaller team is less resources, but at the same time, he did mention that, you know, with a smaller team, that also means that they can keep the game like at a lower budget, ideally, and try to like work with like a skeleton crew and try to get it going, and then maybe like expand the team later after the fact, after they've like launched or after they have a product which they can start to like sell. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with said future goals or with said future project. But yeah, best of luck. Best of luck to David Kim. I do highly recommend the interview itself. We kind of only glossed over some of the main points of the interview, but again, it was very in depth. I still am, wanting for more for sure, but very in depth. 2 hours, over 2 hours long. Do highly recommend it, especially if you're an older school fan of StarCraft from back in David Kim's day. And even if not, there's a lot of history here that's going to be available to you. If you maybe missed that era of StarCraft pre-COVID and back in Heart of the Swarm, Wings of Liberty, Legacy of the Void, launch specifically, then do highly recommend it. For sure. Again, once again, a big shout out to Hearthstone for conducting the interview. I'm curious to see if we get any future interviews from Hearthstone. I feel like he's got the two big ones, Tim Morton and David Kim. Mike Morhaim's next. True. Kim fan, let's go. I don't know if he'll have anywhere near as in-depth interviews for them, just because of their play. I feel like he's got to have some good questions for Mike Morhaim. Get him in, Pappy. Get him in.
People were actually bringing up Dustin Browder because I believe David Kim even mentioned that it was his boss.
Yeah, I said David Browder, Dustin Browder.
That would be like the next step on the ladder, essentially.
Yeah. True. Dustin Browder would be another big one, for sure. So yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely hopeful for things to come when it comes to this interview series that Hearthstone has found himself in. So wish him the best. Wish him the best. Up next, we do have some more uplifting news here when it comes to Neeb. I mean, obviously we knew that Neeb was coming back. We already spoke about the Doyu Cup announcement earlier, a couple of weeks ago. The fact that Doyu Cup is right around the corner as well. But with Doyu Cup coming on the horizon, it looks like Neeb has rejoined Onside as a part of their team to represent them over at Doyu Cup. Now, there are some people speculating that there's no reason to join a team unless he plans to play further than just Doyu Cup. That is a bit of a leap here. I understand the rationale because it's like, would he really just join the team for one event and then just leave the team? I mean, we've seen that happen before. Like, ironically, like we've seen teams sponsor players just for one event and then that sponsorship conclude. So that's happened before, so I wouldn't rule that out. I would love to see Neeb return properly, like in full force, and not just return for this event and play further. I would appreciate that, but it's hard to really say for certain. All we can say for certain is he's joined Onside. He's going to be competing in Doyu Cup. That is this week, of course. Anything further than that will be a bonus. So again, I would keep expectations at just Doyu Cup. And if he happens to compete further than that, then that'd be a pleasant surprise. And we would love to embrace that. If you recall, we spoke about Neeb last week about how he's been in Korea this entire time. He's been living in Korea. I'm pretty sure he finished studying quite some time ago. I remember Trigger speaking on how Neeb, like, he sometimes does, does actually meet up with some of the other like StarCraft individuals in Korea as well, with some of his good friends. So he's been like around, I should say. And yeah, I guess the big question, of course, is whether or not he returns for more than just this tournament. Yeah, definitely hopeful for that. Definitely hopeful. There's definitely room for a top NA Protoss, as Australia has since retired. Silently retired, I should say. And Trigger's still doing well for himself, of course. But it would be crazy to see Neeb return after so long. We'll see. Hard to say with any certainty, of course. Hard to say. And of course, look forward to Doyu Cup as that begins tomorrow. We'll be casting it here on the channel. Up next, we do have up next we have the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, the release of the StarCraft 2 patch 5.0.16. Oh boy! So if you recall, one of our big concerns, and many people's concerns coming into the PTR version 2 was that it took a little bit too long. If you remember, version 1 lasted 3 weeks. It was a very long time that we were stuck on that first version, and it was actually quite uplifting and it was definitely a positive thing when we saw that the PTR was updated with the version 2. a bunch of changes were made. The fact that the changes themselves, I mean, we spoke about that last time about about the changes made and how they decided to stick to their guns when it comes to the worker counts, try to adjust things in a different way, and then of course that led into us covering the GSLCK, which I guess we'll talk about down the line. But very clearly, very quickly, one of the changes that was made was the larva change. The larva rate was increased from I think it was 10.7 to 9 seconds. And we saw that that had some massive ramifications. The reasoning and the rationale for this was because the Zerg rate of growth was quite behind that of Protoss and Terran due to the low worker count. That was done to try to supplement that. But it feels like, and especially because of the shadow patch afterwards, it feels like this was something that was overlooked and something that wasn't brought into consideration by whoever had made this decision, and very quickly it was apparent, like, oh, like there are some unintended side effects or just even main effects from this change. Then there was a shadow patch that did try to pull that back a little bit, but by like half a second, from 9 seconds to 9.5. But this happened over the weekend. The patch 2, PTR 2, I should say, that went live. And if you recall, we had a big discussion about it when we were casting GSLCK. We spoke about it afterwards as well. And if you recall, my big sentiment, my big takeaway was, I was hopeful that we would get an update. We'd get another PTR, say 3, ideally like in a week or two, right? Like I said adamantly, I was like, we can't wait 3 weeks for the next PTR. Like, no, sure, we're running out of time. That was the big thing that I was trying to emphasize. We're running out of time. We have BlizzCon on the horizon. We have the Blizzard Cup on the horizon. Like we gotta be able to like iterate on this and look to make improvements at a much faster pace than every 3 weeks. And then bam, patch went live. It's like, oh. I believe this is day 3. I think this is day 3 of the patch. So the patch just went live like the day after GSLCK.
I want to say
GSLCK concluded, and then like the next day, bam! It got pushed live.
Yeah, I want to say that the PTR 2 went live, like I said, like maybe Friday-ish. Like I'm not sure, but like on Saturday, I'm sure it was live because GSLCK was played. Then between Saturday and Sunday was the shadow patch, which I call PTR 2.5. And then on Monday evening, EU time at least, the main patch went live. I think it actually went live during Monday Night Weeklies. But I know that like I'm pretty sure that it was like delayed on EU, so I'm not sure if it actually affected the tournament itself, because I remember that they pushed Americas first and then like EU and Asia eventually were later. But I'm like fairly sure that it was still during the Monday Night Weeklies. If somebody can check that, because I wasn't watching live.
Yeah. So it was crazy. It was crazy that they just pushed the patch live, they push it through, and with that, they did make some other amendments as well, which was the other big concern that everyone had due to the previous patch, in November. If you remember, in November, we had the previous PTR. It was mainly the Storm patch, if you recall, which was changing Storm in a very big way. And likewise, there was the PTR went live. We had like a couple of weeks to work on the PTR, and then bam, they just pushed it live after making some changes without any testing. Same thing happened here. So the concerns that people had about that happening again were valid, as that happened for a second time now, where a bunch of changes were made, no testing was done, and it was pushed through without having any testing whatsoever. So this has now become a trend. This is now like a very real thing that any kind of future PTR would be very skeptical of when it comes to just how much feedback they're going to be taking, how much testing is going to be happening. So with that, again, we're like day 3. We're like day 3 of the patch going live, and with that, let's go over the patch first. First things first is the map pool update. From here, because it's on top of the patch notes, we can go over to the TL thread. The ladder map rotation was updated. So again, this also happened very, very quickly. I think what caught me off guard is that in PTR 2, a bunch of maps were added to the ladder map pool in the PTR, but they were not the same maps that were finalized in the ladder map pool, which is kind of crazy. Which is kind of crazy here. So Yeah, it was a little bit jarring. I remember Exarch was added to the PTR, but was not added in the final version. Here we have 3 maps added by the community: Blackrock, Washout, and Fear and Faith. They were added in by community voted maps. Meanwhile, and you can see the full list of like the ordering of said maps. Then we had 3 picks from pro players, which was Lockdown, At Attorney's Edge, and Rainfall. They were the top 3 that were picked alongside Washout, of course. And then we had the top 3 by tournament organizers. This was Blackrock, At Attorney's Edge, and Old Sun Temple. In the end, Blackrock and At Attorney's Edge was removed because they were already voted in. So we got Sanctuary 3 and Rorschach. So now we have our finalized 9 maps in the map pool. A little bit surprised that Old Sun Temple got highly rated by the tournament organizers. I'll be honest. That's kind of crazy. What were my picks? I think my pick was Sanctuary 3, Exarch, and Wavebreaker. That's it. I think Wavebreaker was my other one. So a little bit sad that Wavebreaker didn't make it through. I was a big fan of Wavebreaker. Like it was breaking the mold for sure, and I wanted to see some Wavebreaker on the main ladder map rotation. So a big shame that did not make it through. Likewise, Exarch was my favorite for like 4-player small map. I enjoyed it more than like I'm still shocked that Fear and Faith made it through. Not gonna lie, like I'm still very surprised that Fear and Faith got the community map vote. That's insane. And likewise that Old Sun Temple got the tournament organizer one as well. So yeah, I was very shocked, very surprised at that fact. So it's a bit of a shame.
So sad that Exarch didn't make it on any of the rankings. Because it's a genuinely interesting map. It's probably the best description of it. It's interesting because it has some things that like no other map features.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really big shame that Exarch did not make it through, and some of the other maps as well that I personally considered that would have been beneficial and would have made for a better map pool as well. So in the end, we have our 9 maps. I mean, I don't think there's anything to egregious necessarily. Like it's kind of crazy that Rorschach and Rainfall made it into the map pool. That's kind of crazy. I do think that there might be a better balance of maps this time when it comes to larger compared to smaller maps. That's one of the big criticisms that I had of the last 2 map pools. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Time will tell, but I'm a little bit tentative about the current construction of the map pool and how aggressive some of these maps are. But it's hard to really say because we don't really know how the meta is going to land once we kind of get into the finalized version of what StarCraft is about to be. Likewise, a couple of 2v2 and 3v3 maps were added as well. Really cool. We got a massive revamp of the 3v3 and 4v4 map pools, and we had a couple of maps added to the 2v2 map pool with Sludge City and Emerald City. Wait, what?
So here's the thing.
I'm pretty sure Emerald City has been around for a long time.
It has been.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the point is. But here's the thing. The maps that were rotated in for the team maps, some of them are from like previous TLMCs. Apparently a lot of them are Blizzard maps. And instead of taking maps from the team TLMC that happened not that long ago, they just rotated all the maps.
That's kind of crazy.
I was like, okay. Because I saw like the map makers talking about it. It's like, why they added all these Blizzard maps again?
Yeah. I think Megastructure is a Blizzard map. I think I remember that name. I can't quite recall. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. I mean, I say kind of crazy. This is they're kind of doing what people wanted, which is rotating in older maps from years gone by. so on the one hand, I think this is something that people wanted. But on the other hand, as you said, we recently did have like a team game map pool, and it would be nice to implement those maps.
Why not have a mix? Just have a mix of all, like some new, some old. So then you keep it fresh because people who haven't played on the old maps can experience the old maps, and then people who did can experience the new maps. Like mix it up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very interesting when it comes to team maps. Interesting main map pool rotation as well. Then we can get into some of the patch notes themselves. So first things first, the economy. So we do have the workers reduced from 12 to 8. So we have to have a worker reduced here, or starting workers have been reduced by 4. Default large mineral patch resource count reduced from 1,800 to 1,600. Default small mineral patch resource count increased from 900 to 1,100. Likewise, Vespian Geysers resource count increased from 2,250 to 2,500, and we likewise have the resourcing gas geyser harvest return value decreased from 8 to 6. So what does this all mean? First things first, the worker count is the most controversial. Actually, not anymore. I was going to say it's the most controversial change. Not anymore. Not in the current iteration of the game, but definitely up there for sure. There's been a lot of tension in the community when it comes to the worker count and when it comes to.
I would say it's one of the 2 most controversial topics among the community, at least. Like sure. That is the thing that people focus on.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of tension currently in the community when it comes to the starting worker counts. If you recall, I was all for the idea of increasing diversity when it comes to like early and mid game play, and the idea of that's trying to achieve that. But if you recall, and if you've been watching StarCraft over the past couple of weeks, it has become apparent that this is not achieving that goal. And if you recall, we spoke about this during GSLCK. About how at the end of the day, like if this is not achieving the stated goal, then I mean you have to work on either making it work or revert the change. I think if you recall, I was speaking on the fact that at this point I was probably in the group of reverting the change at this point, just because it seems like they aren't actually. At the time I was saying that just because it didn't feel like there would be enough time to try something different. If you recall, at the time, there were some other ideas being floated around when it comes to changing macro mechanics or changing patch placements or base placements or speed of workers or collision, or like there were all these ideas being floated around as to how to try to adjust the rate of growth in StarCraft 2 when it comes to the economy. But my sentiment was that at this point, we were 3 weeks into the PTR. We had just gotten patch the PTR version 2. It felt too late to try something else. So if it's too late to try something new, then I was more along the lines of just revert at this point, because clearly it's not working. Like clearly we haven't been able to get a working version of this. So I'd moved to the side of like at this point, if we can't do it, just scrap it, right? But in the end, they double down. they double down, baby. Which is a bit of a shame, just because, as I mentioned, I would say with more confidence now that the stated goal of what the worker count is meant to achieve is not being achieved. At this point, it's like diversity has not been increased when it comes to early to mid game play. That has not happened. So that is a brutal thing to see, the fact that a bunch of feedback was being provided to Blizzard and that feedback was not necessarily taken into consideration or listened to, or was just pushed to the side. The other big change, of course, is the resources. Now, previously, they had increased the amount of resources in main bases, which allowed players to stay on a low base count for longer. They have removed that change. That was originally in PTR version 1, and it's no longer here. I can't remember if they removed it in PTR version 2, but regardless, it's not in the live version of the game. Instead, what is this? They have increased the amount of gas in bases. That is true. They've increased the amount of gas. When it comes to minerals, they didn't increase the minerals, but they actually shifted some of the resources around. And what that means is that still you can now stay on a lower base count and stay on a greater economy for longer, just because the smaller patches now have increased resources and the larger patches now have decreased resources. Basically, previously, the smaller patches would mine out faster, which means you would require less workers in your main base earlier, right? Like because you'd run out of patches faster, so to be efficient with the same worker count, you'd have to expand and take another base. Now, in the current live version of the game, you can stay on a lower base count and stay with a much more efficient economy for longer, slightly longer. And we actually have seen that come into play in, I think it was in Sparkling Tuna Cup. Sparkling Tuna Cup. And we saw that come into play, and we got to experience that in Hero Series versus Shin, if you remember, when he went for a big 2-base all-in, and he was stuck on a low base count, and he was still like full saturated in the main base, which was crazy. So we have seen that come into play. So now you can stay on a lower base count for a little bit longer. Again, they didn't increase your overall patches, but they increased like the durability of some of the patches, if you will. Likewise, they did increase the gas, which I'm not entirely certain as to why, but they did increase the overall amount of gas on per base, which is interesting. I'm not too certain as to the rationale for that, just because typically gases take a little longer to mine out anyway, and they already last a long time. Now they last even longer. It's a little bit weird. It's a little bit that one. It's a bit of a question mark for me. Up next, Zerg, Hatchery Lair Hive, supply reduced from 6 to 4, cost increase from 275 to 300. So this is a reversion from some of the previous changes. If you remember, there was a bit of a change between the queen cost and the hatchery cost. This was like a year ago, 2 years ago, where they moved things around. If you remember, the rationale for this was because back then, higher queen count was very common, was very standard, was very meta to be able to defend against early game aggression. Specifically in ZVT, it was very, very common to build up to 8 queens, to at least 8 queens, sometimes more than that, to be able to defend early on, to be able to secure yourself in the early game, in the mid game, and build up into the mid to late game. And that did take away a lot of aggressive options from Terran players. So they increased the queen cost, which reduced the amount of queens that you have, which made Terran aggression more flexible, more viable, more effective in ZVT. To compensate for the higher queen count, they reduced the hatchery cost to 275. Now they've increased the hatchery cost back to 300, and I believe they left the queen as it is. So now you have a higher cost queen and a higher cost hatchery. So this is something that they've done. I would imagine this is they probably did this to try to like offset what's currently happening with the larva rate, with the rate of growth of Zerg. So they tried to like they added 25 minerals to hatcheries basically. Is that enough? Nah, it's like, but I would imagine that's the reasoning for it, is that they wanted to try to do something to alleviate what was going on with the larva, and this is what they settled on, I suppose. Likewise, creep spread recede rate slowed from 0.45 to 0.55. Lava, this is the big change. I would say this is right now bigger than the worker count change, bigger than the warp gate change. The periodic spawn rate increased from 10.7 seconds to 9.5. Remember, this was originally 9 seconds in the PTR, and now has been increased from 9 seconds to 9.5. But what we have experienced is that despite this change, it is still very strong. What does this mean? This means that, it means that you can have sloppier macro, but actually have a lot of larva available to you. Even if you're missing injects, or even if you're hitting injects, basically you're going to have faster growth, faster droning, faster army production. Just in general, it's a flat buff to all things Zerg at all stages of the game. As you mentioned previously, the reasoning for this and the rationale for this was because Zerg did have limited options with a lower worker count, because of the low worker count change. This was meant to be like a band-aid solution to that, but it did have some, I would say, based on Blizzard's response, unforeseen consequences, which do mean that the Zerg in general across the board has been heavily just blanket buffed. This is also why there have been some people that maybe haven't like internalized that and have been thinking like, oh, like maybe the meta just has to settle, or maybe, Terran and Protoss players have to like figure some things out to be able to overcome this. But it isn't like a specific unit was changed to be stronger, or a specific composition was changed to be stronger. It's just a flat like increase. Like it's just a flat buff to Zerg, and that's the issue here, is that as a result of that, it's allowed for much easier early game, mid game, late game, like stronger defensive play, faster recovery after worker losses as well. So even if even a Zerg player does sustain a bunch of losses, they can recover faster. If they don't sustain losses, then they take over the map faster as well. And it's been very oppressive. It's been very, very oppressive over the past 4 days now, like 3 to 4 days. It's been very oppressive. We experienced this in PTR number 2. We experienced this now in the live game as well. We've been casting tournaments for the past 2 days as well, and this trend has continued, and we have seen many a Terran and Protoss player struggle as a result. Earlier today, for example, Sola, he 3-0'd Clem. He 3-0'd Clem over the weekend. Maru, he got 3-1 by Raynor, and I feel like Raynor should have 3-0'd as well. Like, I would say that Raynor did have some misplay on the Old Republic during GSLCK. I've seen Shin, Raynor, Rogue, like all these guys have been looking very dominant in said matches, whether it's against Terran, whether it's against Protoss as well. And because of this, any Zerg matchup that we're seeing right now, we're not able to experience any of the other changes, like the warp gate changes or the ghost changes or some of these other changes to the other races, because like the Zerg has been so oppressive here and hasn't really been allowing for the other players to get into their game and to even play the game. It's been crazy. It's been pretty extreme. And it's again, it very, very quickly became apparent, even pre-live, like during the PTR, which is why we saw that knee-jerk shadow patch from Blizzard. But despite that, like it's still not enough. Like I think most players were saying, Mara was even saying that like he can't tell the difference between like 9 and 9.5. Like it's still very, very strong and still like insane. In my opinion, I would imagine that this is one of the changes that is either going to be reverted or nerfed again, like maybe up to like 10 seconds or so. I don't know. Like I can see this changing soon, and I feel like it has to change soon, just because it's right now StarCraft has found itself in a state of play that is it's worse than it's ever been. Like it's very dysfunctional right now. It's very, very dysfunctional. And I guess we can go into some of the other changes as well. But if you recall, like we spoke about this during GSLCK during over the weekend, how even at the time PTR 2 was very undercooked. That's kind of like the terminology they use. It was like undercooked. It was like half baked. It was still lacking. It was still unrefined, and still lacking polish and still lacking direction at times. And then they went live with it, which is crazy. Up next, you have the Spore Crawler. Damage against biological increase from 20 plus 10 to 20 plus 15. This is specific for ZVZ because mutaplay is very oppressive in ZVZ, and it was in the last patch, so this is to help against mutaplay. Scrolling down, carapace upgrades has been reduced. For whatever reason, carapace upgrades were increasing costs, or they were always just more expensive. Now it's been reduced to the same cost as +1 melee, for example. So that does make it more accessible against, specifically this helps in two aspects. It helps against Terran because carapace is the most important upgrade against Terran. So this is a big buff to allow carapace to be much more accessible. So going fast singular Eva Chamber into +1 carapace against 2-on-1s is now easier and much more accessible for Zerg players. So the big buff for Zerg and ZVT. Likewise, this also means that +1 carapace, Lingro, Ravager all-ins in ZVZ are also stronger because now +1 carapace is even more accessible as well. So those are the two instances where this will impact. +1 carapace isn't really impactful when it comes to Zerg versus Protoss. It's not a matchup where that really has any kind of presence. And yeah, so maybe against Terran, against Bio, when it comes to +1 carapace, against Bio timings, and also against in all-ins and ZVZ. Scrolling down, Infestor. Microbial Shroud range increased from 9 to 12. Microbial Shroud can now be cast without requiring an upgrade. Neuroparasite on a building SCV now finishes the building before being expired, and now has an auto attack weapon as well. I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen the auto attack. I don't think I've been looking out for it, but have not noticed it. But unlike a lot of spellcasters like the High Templar, for example, the Infestor now has an auto attack, and I believe the Disruptor has an auto attack as well. So a bunch of spellcasters are now getting auto attacks to help when it's like a quality of life thing. We spoke about this last time during the previous PTR. How for me personally, I'm either all or nothing. Either nothing has an auto attack when it comes to spellcasters, or they all have auto attacks. Like it's all on one side or all on the other. It feels weird to kind of like pick and choose, and to have like some for one and some for the other, and it was always kind of weird in that respect. Always. For the Viper can now abduct tanks, which I would say is a good thing. It was really weird that they made that one change last patch to specifically mean, or to specifically allow Terran players to have more turtle heavy play, which I would say is a negative thing for the game. Like I feel like we want to, like the Viper is supposed to be that siege breaking unit, and to remove the ability to abduct tanks was very, very odd. You can make the argument that the Viper already has two ways to do this, has Blinding Cloud and Abduct, and they're both very similar in that respect. I'm all for hearing ideas about even removing one of them and just having the other, just because they both have similar roles. Obviously, Abduct works on air units, and Blinding Cloud is specific to ground units, so that there of course is a bit of a differential there. But yeah, it's a little bit messy that the Viper has two spells that kind of have the same role. For sure, I can understand that, and that's a discussion for another day, I suppose, when it comes to the Viper and the role that it plays. Next, we do have the Overlord. Overlord speed without Nemesis carapace has been decreased from 0.9 to 0.85. decreased a little bit. I think it was a more extreme decrease previously, and then it was sped up a little bit as well. So they've been messing around a little bit with that. They have the load nearby unit commands. That's been done to all loader units, to medevacs, to war prisms, and to overlords. So now it is much easier to pick things up. That's another quality of life change. This is another controversial one for elitists, or for like purists, I should say, that wants as much micro ability and intensity as possible. And this also probably goes for people that like have a really strong stance against auto attacks for spellcasters, where they want everything to be as hard as possible. So you know, so the really what they want is they don't want auto mining. They want they want to make you manually move workers over to the mineral patch, just like in Brood War. But less extreme. Like I understand people that maybe are against this, that wants that skill floor to be higher. They want a higher skill floor and a higher barrier to entry when it comes to being able to micro a bunch of these units. When it comes to, you know, the High Templar with the auto attack, Infestor with the auto attack, Overlord, Medevac, and now War Prism with the auto load function as well. I can understand that that rationale and that reasoning, that desire to want out of the game. Up next, Overseer. Changelings automatically inherit the current order queue, and Changelings' deaths are contagious to other Changelings. This is like the anti-rogue patch. I say anti-rogue, like a lot of Zerg players, especially in late game scenarios, would go mass Changeling to be able to scout, to be able to get vision, especially in ZVT. Mass Changing was really important when it comes to getting vision for Nidus Worms, to Nidus into the main base, to Nidus into natural as well. It was very, very important for that. So this now does make it easier for Terran players to shut that down. I guess this also, like, I'm sure purists also that don't like the load nearby units don't want auto killing changelings. They're like, I want to focus on every single changeling, papi. Yeah, true. So if you dislike the auto load, if you dislike the auto attack, then I'm sure you dislike the changelings contagious deaths as well. This is all just like quality of life stuff, which I'm fine with for sure. Up next is Mutalisk. Mutalisk glaives now prioritize targets, and the arc slope has been increased. The arc slope, I believe, does make it more microable, so there's now a lot more microability when it comes to Mutalisk. And the glaives now does prioritize units instead of attacking the closest thing. So now it does prioritize like attacking units, I should say, as well. So Mutaplay is now a lot more effective, a lot more viable as well. Up next, we do have Terran changes. We once again, just like the Hatchery, Nexus, and Command Center, supply has been reduced from 15 to 13, again because of the low worker start. Ghost, big changes to the Ghost as well. Supply has been increased from 2 to 3. Health reduced from 125 to 100. This supply increase is something that we've all been asking for. It used to be 3, then it was reduced back to 2, and now back up to 3. So it's just been going back and forth and back and forth. Health reduced from 125 to 100. Ghosts were very, very tanky, and I believe a bunch has been done here to try to make them a little bit more vulnerable, to compensate for the fact that snipes can no longer be cancelled. So attack damage changed from 10 plus 10 versus light to a flat 15. This does mean that it does now less damage to specifically light units, but more damage overall to other regular units. Attack range increased from 6 to 7. Movement speed reduced from 3.94 to 3.85. This does now make them more vulnerable and more susceptible to surrounds and to ground engagements as well. We have been hearing from Terran players how difficult it is now at times to make use of these ghosts depending on the composition that you're up against. So the targeting damage increased from 130 plus 40 versus Psionic to a flat 170. NG cost increased from 50 to 75. This means that a full NG Ghost, I believe, only has 2 snipes available. We have noticed Mass Ghost run out of snipes faster in the late game. That is true, but no longer cancels upon taking damage. This is huge. Specifically, Brewlord Infestor is now much, much weaker against late game Terran. We've seen many in PTR number 1. We saw a lot of late game ZBT, and we saw a lot of Zerg players struggle against Mass Ghost because Fungals didn't do anything. The Fungals did nothing. The Brewlords couldn't cancel. Snipes would pop off, and Brewlord Infestor was struggling hard. We did see players try to play around a little bit more with more ground-centric armies to try to work around that, but they weren't quite able to pull that off. And again, we saw some crazy comebacks happen. Once Mass Ghost hit the field, crazy comebacks, Zergs could not stop it. It was crazy. What I will say very quickly is that There have been other changes made to the Ghost since PTR1, but we haven't seen those changes come into play because in the current live version of the game, because of the larva change, we don't get to see the late game. That we don't get to see the late game. We have not been able to see that late game Ghost kind of dynamic between Zerg. Not anymore. Not since that larva change, because the game ends faster than that. Like the Zerg player usually builds up and maxes out and is able to overwhelm earlier before Terran can really reach that kind of end game composition. Scrolling down, we have the Medivac. Medivac also did have that load nearby unit change. So only a couple of, barely any Terran changes, which is interesting. Just mainly Ghost. Up next, that leads us to Protoss. Nexus change, just like the other main bases. Warp Gate change is the other big one. Warp Gate research speeds up gateway unit production by 40%. This means that if you don't turn your gateway into a Warp Gate, then you have increased production and you can warp in units faster. Kind of like a Terran player. Otherwise, you can turn a gateway into a warp gate by spending 25 minerals, 25 gas. This was reduced from the 50-50 in PTR1. I would say it's a good thing that this was reduced. Personally, I was in the camp of just making it free and having the option of having faster regular gateway production or having the warp gate production available as well. But 25-25, what I will say is that we have seen a shift in Protoss players in PTR1. Gateway play was not viable at all. In now the live version and PTR2, we saw that gateway play was seen a lot more. Like now it's much cheaper and now it's more accessible, and it has allowed Protoss players to actually delve into gateway play more so than at least PTR version 1. There's still a cost behind it, of course. On the flip side of things as well, I should also emphasize that pylons now allow for fast warp-ins. Previously, you would require a gateway alongside the pylon for fast warp-ins. Now it's just the pylon. And because of that, we have seen a lot of hyper-aggressive builds and a lot of very intense gateway play be very successful in recent days. The reasoning for this is because you don't need to wait for a gateway. Your proxy pylon gets online much faster. Your reinforcements arrive faster as well, as you don't have to pay for the gateway or wait for the warp gate either. I mean, of course, you get those speed warp-ins, and it is harder to scout the pylon because it's much smaller in surface area compared to a pylon and a gateway. So because of that, we have seen a lot of really impressive and really cool play with those proxy pylons and with heavy gateway aggression that we have seen over the past couple of days, every now and then. I would not say that's the predominant style that we've been seeing, but we do see it from time to time. Every time we do, it's impressive. So going down, we have and then we have the production time values. The shield battery now starts with 75 energy. That is down from 100. This does mean that reactive shield batteries are weaker. It means that if you throw down batteries, if you've seen all incoming, now less energy is going to be available. This has weakened Protoss defensive play, at least reactive defensive play. Important to bear that in mind. Sentry hallucinations automatically inherit the current order queue. We saw that with the changelings. High Templar, Psystorm, total damage reduced from 110 to 100. Again, for those who are unaware, the Psystorm change that was done previously, most Protoss players, if not all Protoss players at the highest level, agree that Storm right now is stronger than what it once was. Yes, it does less damage, but it lasts a lot longer, and it's a very powerful zoning tool. And again, we've heard from a lot of Protoss players that it's actually better than what it once was, and here we're seeing it reduced just to alleviate some of that zoning potential. Because the Storm is so strong, it's being used to zone very effectively and has allowed for very defensive play to dominate the meta in weeks past. Nowadays, we're not seeing it because of the reasons we mentioned earlier, because of the when it comes to the Zerg matchups. Disruptor now is a phantom attack, and the War Prism can now load nearby units. Now, when it comes to all these changes here, we spoke in depth and at length earlier when it comes to the larva changes. I do want to re-emphasize that when it comes to the Protoss changes here and the Warp Gate changes, we have actually heard from a lot of Protoss players that they're fond or they're okay with the changes to Warp Gate. But because of the Zerg changes, we have been seeing a lot more forced defensive play where Protoss players can't be active on the map. They can't be aggressive. They can't be assertive because Zerg players are just gaining map control so quickly, and it's just forcing higher tech armies and more defensive play out of Protoss. Once again, like because of the current state of the game, we're forcing more turtle heavy play from Protoss and even Terran alike at times. I say that from Terran players, we've been seeing a lot of all-ins. Because they cannot macro against Zerg right now, we've seen a lot of all-ins out of Terran players, and we've also seen them fail very frequently as well. As they just can't play the mid game against Zerg. It's crazy. It's very similar with Protoss, where trying to play standard is not really viable at the moment, just because of the map control that Zerg is gaining right now, especially on these larger maps. So Protoss is kind of being forced to be more defensive. We did see Hero be very creative. He did have a lot of fleet he can play and a lot of mothership rushes, which was catching Shin off guard, which was really cool to see. But I should also emphasize that these are new builds that Hero's working with, and once they kind of get played out a little bit, then it'll be easier to scout and easier to respond. Like I should emphasize that as well, that a big factor there was just the uniqueness of those builds, but that unique factor does fade away over time. So there is obviously that concern to be brought up in regards to ZVP and in regards to the current state of StarCraft. In general, right now, I would say that StarCraft is in a really rough state. It's in a really, really rough state when it comes to all matchups, except for mirror matchups. Like mirror matchups, I think, are the most stable matchups right now. But all the others, whether it's ZVP, ZVT, and TVP, are all currently in a state of disrepair, and we need to see something soon. I think the biggest issue right now is that this patch is hitting just before a bunch of tournaments. We have Doyu Cup in a couple of days. We have Masters of the Game this weekend, if not next weekend. And then we have Home Story Cup at the end of the month, right? We have 3 big events: Home Story Cup, Masters of the Game, and Doyu Cup as well. 3 massive events. And for this to be unleashed just before them in a state of disrepair, it's going to negatively impact all those tournaments. Right now, there are talks behind the scenes. There are talks from tournament organizers about trying to create a mod that does revert the changes to the previous version of the game. We've seen that before when it comes to the Cyclone bug, where we just decide to play with a mod that changes the Cyclone because the Cyclone wasn't changed by Blizzard, and we just play with the mod instead for a more balanced version of the game. The idea that a mod will be made that reverts all these changes and brings us back to the previous version of StarCraft is still more extreme, though. More extreme than the Cyclone bug fix. But it might be what they have to do, to be honest, just because currently the meta and the balance of the game is not acceptable, is what I will say. And it would make for a poor broadcast and it'd make for a poor event, especially if people are paying to go to the event, especially if it's like a big offline event as well. Yeah, I do believe that the idea of making a mod that reverts all these changes is being taken very seriously, and we're going to be in a really weird place if we suddenly start seeing like half the tournaments played on that mod and the other half not, or if not, just all tournaments switch over to that mod in the end, just for a better experience. It would be crazy if that happened. It would be insane, especially if Blizzard doesn't do anything about it. If they don't like make any changes. There's a scenario that I'm envisioning where suddenly all online and offline tournaments switch to the previous version of the game to compete on, and then BlizzCon is played on the actual live version of the game, and it just stands out as a result of that. Like, that'd be kind of crazy. Personally, I do think that there is going to be like a hotfix. I do think that will happen. But how far they're willing to go with the hotfix, hard to say. Personally, I don't think at this point, I don't think they're going to revert the worker changes. I think it's too late. I think they're locked in. I think they committed to that. I think the best we can hope for is that they revert the lava changes. I think the best we can hope for is that, and they might tweak the numbers on warp gates, making it cheaper, removing the cost as well. I can see them changing values, but I don't see them like stepping away from some of the foundational choices made in this mod. By foundational choices, I mean the worker count change, the change to warp gates in general, the ghost change, for example, the infestor change. Like when it comes to some of these units that have been targeted, like I feel like they're going to stick with them, but they might like adjust values here and there. That's my prediction when it comes to like what they're going to do. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I would say the patch so far has been very disappointing. I know that a lot of people, myself included, wanted more from the patch. When I say more, I'm not saying like more drastic things like foundational economy changes, but the big concern that a lot of pro players and just people in general have is that in the previous version of the game, and still currently as well, there is an issue when it comes to late game TVP, sorry, mid to late game TVP, mid to late game PVZ as well, and those aspects of the game are not being addressed by this. I mean, you could argue that like, oh, I guess like the lava change means that Zerg just dominates all of that, I suppose. But like, remove that, like, the current state of mid game ZVP and TVP is still, I would say, not in a good place. And a lot of people, myself included, were hoping that this patch would address that. This patch does not address that. Does not address that. Not in the way that we were hoping for. For TVP, referring specifically to Protoss players getting map control and being very oppressive, you could argue that the gateway change will actually affect that. Maybe. I'm still on the fence about that. We actually haven't seen any mid to late game TVP yet. We have not been able to experience that as of currently over the past like 2 days. Likewise, late game RB compositions referring to late game PVZ, Sky Toss, like that hasn't been changed, that hasn't been adjusted at all here. So the strength of Sky Toss and the strength of that Deathball army is still there. That hasn't been adjusted. Like there's a lot of like aspects that just hasn't been addressed here, which is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of wild. And yeah, I think we were all a little bit more hopeful for this patch, and I would say it has been a disappointment. It has been. Not even just it's been crazy. It's definitely caused a lot of turmoil in the community, especially from those that are invested in the game, and yeah, it's not been well received for good reason, of course, for good reason. I think there was definitely like a group of people that were maybe a little bit hopeful for some of these changes and were a little bit more optimistic, but especially with the lava change happening as well, like I feel like that optimism has been shut out real fast and real quick. Like that's they got rid of all that, all the goodwill, all the optimism. Like it's been rough. It's been rough for sure. And the most that I can hope for, of course, is that they do release a patch. The issue here, of course, is the Doyo Cup is in what 15 hours. Like Doyo Cup is right around the corner, right? So most likely there won't be a patch in time for Doyo Cup. Doyo Cup will most likely be playing on this patch, unless SC Boy work on a mod in time. True, they could. SC Boy, they've got resources. Like they might work on a mod in time for Doyo Cup. There's a chance that might happen. Otherwise, they'll just play it on the PTR. Sorry, they'll play it on the live version of the game. And yeah, I hope it goes well. I mean, I guess Doyo Cup won't really matter as much because it is more of like a show match legend event. It's more about the players and less so about like the games themselves. So like at least there's that aspect to Doyo Cup, but it is a shame that they're going to be forced to play in this current state. It is a shame. And with that, I don't know if there's really much else to get into. Yeah, it's been a rough couple of days when it comes to covering the events and covering these tournaments. And again, when it comes to people that have been tuning in and watching, I do feel like a lot of people have come to said realization as well alongside us when it comes to the current state of the game and the current state of the meta and how all of this has affected StarCraft. So yeah. Fingers crossed. That we get a hot fix that some of this gets addressed. That's all we can hope for, Pat. That's all we can hope for. I know a lot of players have been very vocal about it. I know Shin has been very vocal about his comments. I know that Classic, he was streaming and he was also commenting on GSLCK. And that Classic was commenting on it as well. Hero, he also his also thoughts have been expressed. Ryang has also been very like a lot of the Solar. Clem, he was no GGing the hell out of Solar this morning in Pickerstar Cup. Clem was very upset and very, I mean, as is the case with Clem. But there's been a lot of frustrations from players. There's been a lot of frustrations from almost everyone. So it's been a rough time in StarCraft for sure. Has been a rough time. And yeah, the best we can do is to try to move forward, of course. Try to move forward and try to work with what we have and hopefully give some more constructive feedback and hopefully like the Blizzard team are able to see that and make some changes. Like I say hopefully we can do that. The other option, of course, is we make a mod. We make a mod, compete on the mod. That's another kind of avenue that people are working towards. Worst case scenario, that's most likely what we're going to have to do. Which is crazy. Speaking of PTR, up next we do have the SC Evo PTR 1.20 PTR 3. I believe this was after the SCL Masters show match event, which was testing a bunch of changes in said PTR. So a different mod, StarCraft Evolution, not StarCraft 2. We did have a bunch of changes tested, and now we have a revised version of the PTR. First is the Ghost. When it comes to this, we have yet to cover StarCraft Evolution Masters, so we don't really know the context as to why some of these decisions were made, but we'll be covering that in the next week or so. We'll catch up. Ghost, decrease HP from 60 to 55. The change lowers the minimum amount of energy on the Ghost for this Psycho 2 Temple to kill. Oh, that's an interesting change. Okay. Temple to killed in a single cast of feedback from 120 to 110. Particular value of 55 prevents the Psycho 2 siege tank from one-shotting the Ghost, even with vehicle weapons level 3 researched. Very interesting change here, specific to feedback and making sure that it still survives the tank shot. Interesting. Up next is the Wraith. Oh, okay. Stacking is now toggled on and off with a manual ability instead of automatically on movement. Wait, what? That's crazy. Wait, what? You can toggle stacking? That sounds crazy. That's like a fundamental change to the game. Like we were talking earlier about making the game easier, and we were talking about like spellcasters having auto attacks or automatic loading on medevacs and on overlords. This is disabling stacking. Like, that's crazy. that's like, hey, I'm gonna press this button and then my mutas can like just automatically magic box a Thor. That's insane. Okay. Stacking mode is toggled on a per unit basis. Stacking mode is on by default. Separation radius while stacking mode is enabled 0.1. Separation radius while stacking mode is disabled 0.02625. Recently, we added a change to the Wraith that automatically shrinks its separation radius while in motion, allowing it to stack in tight formations. Although players have remarked that Wraith control feels vastly improved with this change, one negative consequence of Wraith stacking so tightly is that players are less able to split them against splash damage. Yeah, that's what I mean. So now we have an automatic split button. That's crazy. When we first discussed internally adding stacking capabilities on the Wraith, we wanted stacking mode to be enabled automatically, because we felt the manual toggle will be more contrived. However, upon further reflection, stacking air units is also manual tech in Brood War, so we think it's okay to use a manual toggle here. As such, stacking mode is now toggleable. That's crazy rationale. What they're referring to is that in Brood War, units don't automatically stack. Like, that's why infamously you got the Jaedong Overlord, right? Where you had to have the Overlord in the same control group as the mutas to be able to force them to stack. Stacking is a little bit more unnatural in Brood War. So it's crazy that they're using that as rationale for like the purposes of unstacking units. Yeah, that's wild. Okay. Interesting. It's wild, and I'm curious if they're going to be consistent and do that with other units as well, with mutas, right? Like if you're like, oh no, but in Brood War you have to like manually stack them, right? It's like, are you going to do the same thing with mutas as a result, or are we like picking and choosing like what to apply this to? Spawning pool, increased build time 53.6 to 67.1. Okay, increased build time on the spawning pool. A Zergling increased movement speed from 4.33 to 4.38. So increased movement speed, decreased attack period, so they attack faster, and decreased metabolic boost research time as well. Okay, so we've got some flat buffs here for the Zergling. Hydra, increased attack period to 0.73. That looks like maybe like a Brood War value, I'm not too sure. And decreased cost on muscular augments. These changes taken as a set aim to remove the Hydralisk from its currently central role in StarCraft 2 Terran Terran matchup in favor of the Zergling, Lurker, and Mutalisk. Okay, so it looks like they didn't like that Hydras were being amassed as much as they were in ZVT. Currently, with how Brood War Zerg is able to begin ground carapace research long before StarCraft 2 Terran is able to afford infantry upgrades, Hydras are just barely able to fight bio forces without support from other Zerg tech. I don't think this is healthy for the matchup. Cool. Scrolling down. Oh, they're doing it. That's crazy. Are they only doing it for the Mutalisk and for the Wraith? Is there like a Protoss unit that we're also doing this with, like the Corsair or the Scout? But yeah, they're also doing like stacking with mutas. That's crazy. Like I brought up mutas as a more extreme example because I feel like that is a more extreme example because like the idea of going mass muta I feel like is a lot more commonplace. The ability to like auto destack them is insane. This is a copy paste of what was above. Scourge, increase HP, decrease movement speed. Interesting. One of the greatest beneficiaries among Brood War units in the transition to the Cycle 2 engine was the Scourge. In Brood War, although it was tied for being the fastest air unit in the game, Scourge could be dodged by enemies who exploited the unit's poor targeting. True. In Cycle 2 engine, Scourge now path directly towards the enemy air units, and never overkill. To address this, we are nerfing the Scourge's movement speed. This allows for a bit of X to escape more easily and slightly aids skilled players to focus firing Scourge. Cool. Ultras. Ultras increase attack period from 0.6 to 0.36. Cool. We'll notice the sheer speed of the Ultralisk allows it to disengage from combat and rotate around enemy defenses more quickly than its SC2 counterpart, perhaps to a good degree that the SC2 races find difficult to contend with. However, we also do not want to simply remove the trait that distinguishes the two Ultras from each other. Okay, so just core values. Alright, cool. I noticed that in the northern changes as well. Protoss changes increase build time for the gateway 46.4 to 48.2. This change offsets a slight increase in early pressure that Protoss can exert due to cheaper gateways. I believe that was changed earlier, like in the previous patch. Dragoon, increase HP, decrease shields, or increase by 10, decrease by 10. Increase attack period from 1.25 to 1.34. Oh, okay. Decrease research time for the range upgrade. Simply put, the Dragoon proved to be too powerful with an attack period of 1.25. So we're reverting this attack period change and bundled singularity charge research time nerf. Okay. I'd have to take them at their word for that. It was a little bit too strong. Dark Templar, decreased build time. In PTR 2.0, we increased the build time of Dark Templar to offset the cheaper gateway production. This was out of the concern that Dark Templar build too quickly. However, considering the relative difficulty of using Dark Templar and Dark Archons, we decided this was unnecessary. And busted the Dark Archon, which I'm not opposed to. It's a very niche unit, and it's a very fun unit as well, so I appreciate that they're trying to make this more accessible. Increase feedback range, decrease research costs from mind control, and decrease energy costs as well. Yeah, they just want to see it used more. Reaver, increase HP, decrease shields. Similar change to what we saw from the Dragoon. Interesting. Decrease sight range from 9 to 8. Decrease unload stun duration from 1.25 to 1.12. That's pretty huge, actually. Like, the stun duration was like the big thing, the big mitigating factor for the Reaver. So decreasing that is pretty huge. But if you recall, they were saying that Reaver openers were seen less commonly, and they wanted to try to re-incentivize that in the previous patch. Increase scribe in a radius. Oh, sorry, increase the scribe in a radius from 0.18 to 0.31. This value affects pathing and collision with units, not the splash damage area. Oh, yeah, I was curious about that. Okay. We recently increased the Reaver's attack range from 9 to 10 to give Protoss a consistent tool against seismic spine lurkers. While the increase accomplishes this goal, it also made the Reaver too strong against other ground units. In hindsight, trying to buff the Reaver this way would inevitably make it particularly impervious to ground attacks. As such, we are reverting the Reaver's attack range from 10 to 9. We also need to look to other answers to seismic spine lurkers, such as Ixor, Maelstrom, Disruptor Web, Stasis Fields, and Skytos. Sight range reduction from 9 to 8 serves as a further discouragement against leaving Reavers unattended or unsupported. With these buffs reverted, we are reverting to the compensatory unload stun duration nerf. Scout and Arbiter, no stacking here. Okay. Interesting. Only for Wraiths and Mutas, not for Scouts or Reavers. Sorry, or Corsairs. We increase shields, increase recall energy costs. Okay, interesting PTR changes here. Once again, as I mentioned previously, when it comes to Robo Reaver Drop openers, they were seeing a lot less frequently, so they've been messing around and trying to adjust that a lot to re-incentivize that kind of play. Re-incentivizing Dark Archons, always a good thing. Dark Archons, again, they're very niche, very fun unit that we always love to see, so appreciate that we're trying to work in that direction. The auto stacking is still... I mean, we'll see what happens. I will say that when it comes to some of these changes that might seem a little bit extreme, like toggling stacking, this is always something they can always revert, right? Like they're very much so willing to like make changes almost at a whim. Like that can be a positive thing, that can be a negative thing, but they're always more than happy to like to remove something if they go too far in a certain way, or if something has unintended consequences. They just get rid of it, get it out of here. But yeah, I think that's maybe one of the things that I'm most interested in, to see how the auto stacking works for the Wraith and for the Muta. Likewise, when it comes to like the strength of Zergling and taking away power from the Hydra list as well, also will be interesting. We have been seeing a lot of very heavy Hydra play in StarCraft Evolution, so that might de-incentivize that and might open up some other avenues for Zerg, which I'm all for sure. Which I'm all for. When it comes to StarCraft Evolution news outside of the PTR, and again, they're still working on that, we did get some other news in regards to SEL, in regards to the StarCraft Evolution League. Looks like code A, B, and C has been indefinitely postponed. If you recall, Hyper One, he had some ambitious plans in regards to having like a code S for StarCraft Evolution, and a code A, and a code B, and a code C. But that has been changed. Looks like some things have maybe changed IRL. Hyper One did make a post on his Discord about this. I was saying that it's become apparent to me that I'm currently not able to take the responsibility of managing 3 leagues with all the bracket work: Wikipedia editing, event promotion, player coordination, ruling, and arbitration, replay gathering and sorting, and more without helping hands or software that will help me automate everything at least partially. Organizing several leagues of this size is already no small time commitment for any tournament organizer. However, the existing work going into running the StarCraft Evolution League and managing esports side of SE Evo Complete as a whole is essentially a full-time job, or second full-time job. This time I simply don't have anymore without sacrificing my own career advancement, relationships, and general health and well-being. I'd sincerely hoped by now that the time and effort I put into SEL would inspire similar grassroots efforts elsewhere, but that has largely not been the case. Evidently, I simply cannot promote SEL as loudly and frequently as it needs to get the attention to grow. Meanwhile, the maintenance of the mod for existing players has been suffering. I have already been unable to put out high-quality Brood War map ports for over a year, and establishing the balanced direction of the mod seems like a perpetual drain on my resources. I apologize to everyone who has been looking forward to these events, and I recognize that it will be demotivating to many of you. I wish I had a cleaner solution, consolation for you, but it's clear to me that scaling SCL is simply not possible as one individual with irregular admin support. So in the meantime, I'm going to be pruning the number of complexity of events SCL runs, and this is the first cut. I'm not giving up on the amateur scene forever. I just need a better system if I'm going to handle this alone, and building the system is what I will be working towards. Perhaps I can return my focus here once I have the system after the balanced direction of the mod is more stable, or there are enough spare Brood War maps that meet our competitive needs. Okay. It's an interesting post here from Hyper One. It's interesting. When it comes to StarCraft Evolution, the reality is, as was kind of mentioned here, there were some tournaments that popped up. Obviously, the CIS region, they host their own StarCraft Evolution tournaments, like on a semi-regular basis. We did have some Chijik events, like, hey, we have like the Crank Gathers tournaments. We had the Chijik, like Murloc King tournaments, for example. And infamous and more regularly, we did have SE Boy, right? SE Boy, they were hosting a bunch of tournaments in SE Evo for a time as well. But for the most part, like, these have been very inconsistent. For whatever reason, like, there hasn't really, and I can't really speak on this myself, but there hasn't really been, and I don't know why, like, there hasn't really been much interest from other aspects of the community. Like, I'm referring to, I don't know, like Wardy or like Steadfast, or like some of these other like big casters, Rotterdam, some of the Loco, Winter. Like, they haven't really been too interested in like covering too much StarCraft Evolution for their own reasons. yeah, I can't really speak onto that. I mean, partially I would imagine the player base, right? The player base is a lot smaller. We've been very critical about like the balance of StarCraft Evolution, the kind of the direction of how a lot of games go. There's a lot of potential in SC Evo, but obviously it takes a lot of work as well. So yeah, Hyper One, he's the only one that's like regularly hosting these kind of bigger events. I would say this is kind of on. I say kind of on Hyper One. Something that, of course, we had to find out ourselves is that it is important to like find other like-minded people to work together with. Whether it's the CranKy Ducklings being a team of people, even CranKy Duckling adjacent casters and admins and tournament organizers, I feel like we've done a decent job when it comes to like reaching out and having people that are willing to work with us or help us when it comes to running our own tournaments. And I would say that it, especially because of how long SE Evo has been running, like Hybrid, he's speaking a lot about doing everything himself, where I would have hoped that he would have been able to build up a comparable like support structure around him of other like-minded individuals that are really passionate about StarCraft, right? About StarCraft Evolution, to be able to have regular admins, to be able to have regular people that are looking to work in the space as well. It's a little bit surprising that that hasn't been the case. Even for example, when it comes to like, I don't know, commissioning maps, right? Like the amount of money that Hyper One puts into like the prize pool of these tournaments, like wind that back a little bit, spend less money on that, and I don't know, pay like a commission for other map makers to like port Broodor maps. Like I'm sure they'd be willing to do so. And like clearly the money is there because like the prize pools for SCL events have been pretty insane. Like the money is there, and he even himself is talking about how he's like excelling and advancing his own IRL career and finding some successes there. So like there are other ways to like alleviate and have other people like help at times. And yeah, it's I don't know, it's just obviously everyone has their own reasons, and I guess maybe I don't want to get too into it, but yeah, it feels kind of weird that we're how many years into SCL and apparently he's doing everything himself. It's weird. It's a little bit weird, and it might be too late, but that's the advice that I would have given to Hyper One, like maybe like 2 years ago, like to try to like, you know, construct a team of like reliable people that you can work with and that have similar goals, and then you can like, you know, build something together. And even if you have less time to do something, then you can rely on others to kind of like step in and to step up, and there are other ways to do things. It can always be hard, you know, looking for help or working with other people for sure, right? It can always be hard to do so, but yeah. It feels like Hyper One is just taking everything upon himself, and as a result, there are other things that are suffering as a result of that. Whether it comes to porting maps, whether it comes to SEL code A, B, and C, and other aspects. But regardless, I hope I mean, clearly he's passionate about StarCraft Evolution, clearly. So I would hope he's able to find a way to make this work. And I should emphasize as well that Code S is still running. Like he specified, you know, other leagues, but Code S is still going to be running, from my understanding, and I believe the Ladder Invitational is still running as well. So there are other things that are still going to be ongoing, but yeah, it all comes down to like the spare time that everyone has to run all of this. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just it just feels a little bit odd to me that we're this far into SCL, but Hyper One feels or finds himself like by himself doing all of this, when I feel like I feel like even in SEL, there's got to be other people that can be relied upon for sure, but maybe not. I don't know. Hard to say, Bobby. Hard to say. So best of luck to Hyper One, best of luck to SEL and everything that's going on over there. Up next, we do have our tournament results. Do have our tournament results up next. Up first is going to be the War TV Spring Championship 2026. Did this conclude? It did. Okay, it did conclude here over the weekend. It's been a very long tournament that has been running, and oh, it looks like we had a couple of forfeits as well in the lower brackets, but did take place over the course of the week. Remember, this was pre-current live version of the game. This was in the older version of the game instead. We had Clem. He took down Hero 3-1, took down Cure 3-0. Oh, shout popping off with his Protoss, Pappy, and took down Max in the grand finals. A lot of Protoss, a lot of Terran. This is where like the this is where the Zerg purists come out and be like, see, like you want this instead of like Zerg winning everything in the current live version of the game. There's a nice balance in between, Bappy, which is what we were hoping for. It's a balance of things instead of, you know, one race overpowering the others. As here, Clem does take down Max Max 4-1 to be our WarDCV Spring champion. Congratulations. Congratulations here to Clem. Very strong showing. Max was the biggest threat to Clem. You can see that Max did force Clem to the ace match in the upper bracket quarterfinals, and likewise did take a map in the grand finals as well. Max taking down Solar, Hero, Zan, and Cure to make it to those finals. GG. GG will play. Congratulations to Clem for becoming our Spain champion. Meanwhile, that leads us into GSLCK number 4. We were alluding to this earlier. We, of course, were the main English stream for this event. This was the first kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? This is like the sign of the apocalypse. This is like the first horseman. It's like oh no, this was kind of like the first sign of things to come when it comes to the eventual live version of the game. This was a 2-day event, quarterfinals day 1, and then semis and grand finals on day 2. In the quarterfinals, that was PTR version 2, if I recall correctly. Yeah, it was version 2. Instead of 2.5, and this is where we saw a dominant showing by Zerg players. We had Rainer 3-0 Classic, Lambo 3-0'd Hero, Solar 3-0'd Clem, and Maru 3-0'd Showtime. Very strong showing here from Zerg and from Maru as well. Very fast games, and I would go as far as to say very kind of imbalanced games as well. Like it was brutal. Like the amount of oppression from Zerg players was crazy during the quarterfinals. Coming into the semis, this is when we had PTR 2.5 or the shadow patch, which did alleviate some of that, but by then it was too late. We already had ZVZs, right? By then, Solar takes down Lambo 3-0. Rainer took down Maru 3-1, and then we had the grand final ZVZ between Rainer and Solar. I will say that mirror matchups are probably some of the more enjoyable aspects of StarCraft at the moment, and it was a really solid finals. Probably the best series of the entire tournament, to be honest, was Rainer versus Solar, alongside Solar versus Lambo as well, just because there wasn't any kind of like egregious thing looming over them when it comes to a strength over another race. Here, because it was both the same race, like that kind of like canceled each other out. And we actually got to experience some StarCraft, which was crazy. It's great. We got to experience a lot of 10 pools as well, to be fair. There was like 2 or 3 10 pools in that day of broadcasting. Quite a lot, actually, quite a lot. And Rainer, he did speak on that. Rainer, he, thankfully at the end as well, Rainer, he was gracious enough to provide an interview with Shin, with Solar and Ryung. Shout out to Solar. Solar, he was translating. Ryung and Shin were casting and asking questions as well. And Rainer, he was also expressing the strength of the larva change, expressing his disdain for the worker change as well, and for the current state of the game. He also made some tweets about it, if you recall, talking about how crazy the lava change is. And yeah, again, this was like all like alluding to what would eventually come with the live version of the game, which kind of stuck with all of this as well. Which again, it's kind of wild that happens. But GG well played. Congratulations to Rainer for claiming the tournament and for becoming our GSLCK number 4 champion. GG well played. Again, GSLCK is a monthly event. It's a monthly tournament, and we will, and every time it seems like they're going to be changing their format, so I can't really confirm what the next format is going to be. But shout out to Shin. Shin was helping to organize this event as well, so big shout out to Shin and to GSL for hosting the event. It's a shame that, again, I mean, I say shame, like the purpose of it was to showcase the PTR, and it did, yeah, it was did it achieve much in that I can't quite say for certain, because like changes will push through anyway, unfortunately. But GG well played here to Rainer. That leads us into our StarCraft Evolution League 23 PTR edition. Oh, okay, so we did have an open tournament here for the PTR 3.0 edition. Here we had Björn competing alongside Holmono, Rumieth, Mang Russell as well. Björn to come in as the kind of bigger name in this event. Shatamino VK to take a map off of Björn. Then Björn, he 3-0'd Holmono and 2-0'd Rumieth in the grand finals. It looks like both players did agree on a best of 3, I would imagine. They agreed on best of 3, and Björn did 2-0. So with that, congratulations to Björn. Once again, it looks like this was for testing changes, either what we just saw or for future changes as well, for, again, PTR 3. So congratulations to Björn. typically when it comes to StarCraft Evolution, players like Classic, players like Shin, Solar, they're typically the ones that can threaten Beyond, and they weren't quite able to be showcased there. But you can see them here in the Ladder Invitational. So the group stage did conclude Def Mars, he did advance on out of Group A, MaxFax made it out of Group B, and then we have our top 8 players. We have Rumieth versus Classic, we have Beyond versus Def Mars, Shin versus Cure, and Solar versus MaxFax. Oh my god, the lower half of the bracket is very stacked. Shin, Cure, Solar, and MaxFax. Who seeded this? That is crazy. They all seeded together. I would say that Def Mars and Rumieth are the odd ones out. I would say that Classic and Beyond are favored to make it to the semifinals, and I would say that Classic is favored to make it to the grand finals thereafter. We'll see. Best of luck to Beyond. Lower half of the bracket, I can't predict. MaxFax is also one of the weaker players here, just because he has a lot of... He's very inexperienced in StarCraft Evolution, so I don't have as much faith in MaxFax as I would in the base version of StarCraft 2. But it'll be cool to see him play nonetheless. So do look forward to it. Best of luck. Best of luck here, as again, this will be taking place in over a week's time, and most likely we'll be covering the playoffs via replays. We'll get there. We will get there. That leads us into the Patches Patch Clash number 8. Here we have Patches. He does host this tournament on a regular basis with his own balance mod, custom balance mod, crazy changes with all things. I mean, he has a massive spreadsheet full of upgrades. Like, there are just so many upgrades added. It's just a really unique style or version of the game. I know there were some people that were even saying like, hey, let's push some of these changes through the PTR. We didn't quite get there, unfortunately, but really cool turnout, actually. Massive amount of signups. Double elimination as well. Crazy. Very impressive. 600, a massive prize pool. $600 prize pool. Now it makes sense, baby. Now it makes sense. Massive prize pool, a lot of players. We had Solar, we had Geralt, Fiance, Skillus, Beyond, Nickrack, Mana, Christiana. A lot of players here competing, and Rotterdam did actually cast the event as well. So shout out to Roddy for giving a limelight here to the Patches Patch mod. And in the end, Solar took down Fiant at 2-0, took down Geralt at 2-0, took down Beyond 2-0, and took down Skillus 4-2 in the grand finals. GG well played. Solar just blazing his way through everyone. Shout out to Skillus, by the way, because he did take down Beyond to make it to the finals as well. Very impressive. Very impressive play there out of Skillus. That leads us into the Amateur League Weekly. This is a weekly tournament here, a weekly tournament for amateur players. So the first edition is for Bronze to Platinum. Looks like, we did have some no-shows. This was a couple of days ago. This is over the weekend. I'm sure there was a lot of chaos ensuing in regards to the mod, so maybe less signups this week, as Jackals get to walk over win. Up next, we have the Veteran Edition for Diamond 3 to Diamond 2. We had some regulars. We had Glacius, Pretty Fly, we had Review, Smite Steel, Lucid Shadow, Senju as well. So a lot of regulars here. In the end, Pretty Fly takes down Review 2-0, takes down Happy T-Kid 2-0, and takes down Smite Steel UA 3-1 in the grand finals. GG well played. Congratulations here to Pretty Fly for claiming the win. That leads us into the Prestige Edition. This is for Diamond 1 to Masters 2 players. Some lower signups this week, actually. Okay, so some less players. Here we had Steez, Boreal, Set, Zigger, Miss Crimson, Vendetta Vic, Darkblade, and Defiance. So a lot of regulars that we typically expect. Blue Knight as well. In the end, Set, he 2-0 Zigger, he 2-0 Steez. He gets a walkover win over Miss Crimson, and does actually fall to Darkblade in the finals. Okay, Darkblade also a walkover in the lower brackets. Takes down Set 3-0. GG, well played. A very impressive performance there by Darkblade. Impressive comeback. That leads us into the Elite Edition. Nickrack gets a walkover win. GG. GG, well played. As that leads us into our Amateur League monthly tournaments, Master Sword Open, number 104. This was also a PTR event. Again, all of our tournaments at the time were hosted on the PTR to get as much testing as possible. And of course, this was covered by Kuro and by Steel Mold as well. Here we had Boreal. Boreal takes down Waffle 2-1, takes down Milka 2-0, and takes down Milka 3-0 in the grand finals. Oh, big win here for Boreal de Guatemala, papi. GG, well played. Kuro, did you have any thoughts on this event, which you covered with Steak?
Nothing specific for this one, I'm afraid. I'm trying to think if no.
Do you remember? Do you remember the games? Do you?
You're asking the wrong question or the right questions. Because I told you, like, I have this problem. Okay, here's the thing. This is why I always say that I'm not a professional caster. I have a really hard time remembering games unless something really specific happened. Like, if I was like shocked by something that happened, then sure. But like, if it's like fairly the usual, I have really hard time remembering games. So I cannot tell you honestly.
Yeah, okay, there you go. That's very memorable. Very memorable. But congratulations to Burial for claiming the win over Milka. Very impressive. I think that might have even been... Is that the first win for Burial in MSO? I know he's competed before, but...
It may be. I would have to check.
Yeah, his first win. Okay, GG or Este Burial, papi. GG all players. Congratulations on his first MSO win. That leads us into the StarCraft 2 Community Team League 2026 Spring Edition. This is a Chinese team league, which is slowly wrapping up. Round 12 did conclude. Here we had Team Old Man. They take down Super Puppy 6-0. We had Toe Project. They take down Kauda 4-2. Super Kitty takes down Elpis 3 4-2. We had Astartes. They take down Rookie Warpgate 5-1. We had Starlight Twinkle take down Protoss Leves 4-3. Oh, this actually went all the way to the ace match. Hold on. Rewrite 2-0's SOH. Hyper 1 gets... Hyperion... Hyperion's on SLT? I haven't seen Hyperion play in a long time. So just checking here. Yeah, up until last year, Hyperion, he was on Weibo. I said Weeaboo. He was on El Huevito Gaming. If you recall, the team that Hero was on. So it's very recent that he joined Starlight Twinkle. So that's why I was very much so caught off guard. Very much so. Okay, so really cool to see. Really cool to see Hyperion return after a very, very long time. It gets 2-0'd, but cool to see him nonetheless. Young Zest, he does tie up 1-1 against Ivy, and then Rewhite takes on Trap 1-0. GG. GG all played Starlight Twinkle, they do claim the series. Then had Little Fairy, they take down Team Hist 4-2. We had PCEC take down Leor 4-3. Also went to the ace match. A little bit surprising, but looks like there was a walkover in the first round. And yeah, Leor, they fight back strong. Impressive. I was leaning more towards PCEC in that series. And Elpis, they take down Fairy Thug 6-0. They take down the Thugs, papi. GG. GG well played. Up next is going to be round 13. We do have another lineup of players here. PCEC versus Elpis is going to be a big one. Little Fairy versus Protoss the Best, another big matchup as well. So some decent matchups are on the horizon here as we only have 3 weeks left for the group stage. Only 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, speaking of this team league, I wanted to mention something that Mixu has said that he's not playing for PCEC anymore. I don't know what the exact date is of him leaving, but he's no longer on the team.
We'll figure it out. We'll get around to it. But good to know. Good to know, as Mixu, he was one of the stronger players on PCEC. And it is going to be brutal that they have lost him, just because he was, I would say, the ace player on the team. So best of luck. That leads us into the Team Gosu Power Rankings number 12. It has been a while. When was the last Power Rankings? Like 2 years ago? Jesus. Last year, 2025. It has been almost a year exactly. Almost a year exactly since the last Power Rankings. Again, Team Gosu, they're an NA-based team. Infamously, they had Miyamaika for a time. But of course, Miyamaika has since retired. Did Special joined? I mean, I feel like he'd fit in quite well with him, to be honest. But, yeah, it looks like Special, he joined last year. I didn't even notice. It's been on Team Gosu for almost a year, actually. Okay. I had no idea. But yeah, it's okay. So Special, we have Star Killer. He's not on Team Gosu, but he's going to be competing. Scrubbles, Samuel, Reaper. He's also not on Team Gosu, but will be competing as well. Basically, like a lot of the NA boys are going to be competing this event. A lot of them are very much so like part-time players or like amateur players at this point. They don't really play too much, so it's going to be difficult to really judge their rate of play. Like in peak condition, I'd be hyped for like Binsky. Like the spaghetti boy. Like
see. You say it will be difficult to judge their level of play, and this is why this is a power ranking. This is how you establish their power level.
True. like in their peak, I would rate like Binsky very highly. I'd rate obviously Juanito Special very highly, Reaper as well. But right now, like everyone's out of shape, everyone's out of practice. So I don't know how to rate these players. Like I don't know how to rank them. Tentatively, like Special is still like the highest rated player here, but because we're all out of shape, like it can go either way. Like best of luck to everyone, baby. Best of luck. Double elimination. It'll take a long time to get through the bracket itself. Scheduled to end by October of this year. GG. So best of luck. That leads us into the Malecos Replay Liga Season 15 League or Division 4. Division 4. Once again, shout out to Malecos, has been organizing a lot of events for the German scene, for the German community. Regal was casting, BattleMac was casting as well. We're not really familiar with any of these players, but again, like they're more like up-and-coming amateur players, and it's really important that someone like Malecos is facilitating for the local German scene and allowing for them to compete and look to improve and look to level up as well. We always do champion this sort of thing. GG, well played. Really cool to see the German scene thriving. True. Really cool to see. That leads us into Amantes. Amantes is StarCraft number 47. This is a monthly tournament for the Brazilian scene. Double elimination. But we are missing some of our regulars here. I don't see Kamikaze. There's no Kamikaze. There's no Inexorable. There's no Eric. Without any of the players that I just named. Without Dorminoko either. Master just cruises his way to a win. He 2-0s Mathos. He 2-0s Glibo. He 3-0s Tour. And he 4-0s Mantega. Heavy, strong showing, poderoso. Strong showing here by Master. He does 2-0 and 3-0 and 4-0 his way to victory here. Again, the other top Brazilian players were not competing, not this month. GG all played. Master does claim the win. That leads us into the Host Open number 24. It looks like the event is still ongoing, and I see something very similar here. I see Master. I don't see the players I just mentioned. There's no Eric, there's no Dominoko, there's no Inexorable, there's no Kamikaze. Tior does take a map off of Master, which is impressive, but I still do rate Master as the heavy favorite here in this tournament. Best of luck to everyone else. Best of luck. And shout out to Gustavo, who does cover the event in Brazilian. That leads us into Legacy League Japan, number 505. It was last week that Tapioca did stumble and did not win. Was it Akira? I think Akira took down Tapioca last week. But this week, back to normal. The Boba is back on top, and Tapioca will claim the tournament, taking down Psyark 2-0, taking down Antaro Raven 2-0, Hirakui 2-0, and Akira 2-1 in the finals. Quickly double checking here, it was Deadly Kitten, that's it. It was Akira who took down Tapioca last week, and then Deadly Kitten won the tournament. This time Akira does take a map, but does fall to Tapioca. GG, well played. The baby's too strong, baby. It's concentrated this week. Concentrated. Up next we did have, this is a multi-day event? I did not know that. What?
So here's the thing, I do not know if this is because they spread the event to multiple days or if the scores were simply not updated, because I do not know where like the original bracket is. So if anybody has any information about this, then make sure to check this out.
Yeah, this is a weekly tournament for the Chinese scene sponsored by Thunderfire. It's a massive prize pool, 500 USD on a weekly regular basis. And we are missing some of our regulars. We have Silky. I see Silky. I see Jeshi got knocked out. Wait, is that Nanyu? Is that Silky or Nanyu? I need to be able to differentiate between the two of them. That is okay. Silky takes on Jeshi 2-1. Big win. Silky tours. Who seeded this bracket? What the hell? Silky, Cyan, and Jeshi. They were all together in that early stage of the bracket. That is insane. Spread them out, baby. Spread them out. Oh, infamously, a lot of Chinese tournaments, Kung Fu Cup as well. There's no seeding. They just randomize. They just roll the dice and just let it fly. Baby. They don't care. It's crazy. It's crazy. So a brutal seeding in this tournament as all the top players knock each other out. That does open things up for other players though. True. We have a Keyboard Warrior. He's up against Oriana. We have Smile versus Golden Sat, who I'm not familiar with. We have Silky versus Cassie, and we have that should now be Tsukino? Nanyu. There we go. Then we have Nanyu versus Number as well. So GG well played. Again, it looks like a multi-day event, but as Kura stated, it's possible that maybe some of the results were not updated. Hard to say. You know what's possible as well? Maybe the patch hit mid-tournament, and then
yeah, I was gonna say
it
it's
just broke
possible
everything.
that the tournament just fell apart because of that. They were like, maybe they are just still thinking what to do with this because they played half the tournament in one patch and the other half like, what to do?
It's possible. It's possible. Wishing the best. Wishing the best. Hope we get some more day tune in regards to this week's tournament. Up next, we have the Basilisk Big Brain Bounce number 119. Once again, we have a show match series sponsored by Basilisk. Here we have, and I would also ask you whether or not there is a page for this week's Shopify Sunday.
There is not. I wanted to bring it up after Basilisk, but here's the thing. Because Hearthstone does not announce the matches until the stream goes live. Like, one time I saw he made like a Reddit post like half hour before, but since then he has not posted anywhere. I don't know if maybe like he posts on like his YouTube or he's like, I don't know if he has a Patreon. But at least publicly, there's no information about what the show matches will be. So the Wikipedia editors are like, well, if he's not gonna give us information, then how do we even make a page? And they just kind of stopped making the pages. So if anybody is in contact with Hearthstone and wants there to be pages on Wikipedia, then feel free to ask him for info beforehand and maybe make some pages. So we can talk about the results.
Yeah, infamously, there's been very little forewarning and very little information about the Shopify tournaments, and it's been very chaotic and very off the cuff and very disorganized. So hopefully we can tighten that up a little bit, and we can get some Wikipedia pages going and get some results and know what the hell's going on. Hopefully, Pappy, hopefully.
Because basically,
but here we did have.
I just want to say that basically, as it is now, if we want there to be a page on Wikipedia, and that's the best bet we have for information, somebody would have to like go either watch live and just update from what they see, or just go to the VOD and comp the entire VOD for the scores, basically. So if you want to do that, you are free to do so as well, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So we have our 3 show matches. We have the fun one, which was Defi versus J-Mac. Went all the way to the ace match. J-Mac did take down Defi 3-2. This was played on a TLMC map pool. Interesting. With Defenders Labs. So this was pre the TLMC map pool being confirmed and being finalized. We then had another best of 5 here. El Huevito versus Maples. This is another example of what I mentioned about the team goes to power rankings, right? Like Maples in his prime, I would say is comparable to Eggs. But Eggs 3-0 Maple, like that is huge. Like that is a big result. Remember, this is in the previous version of the game. This is not affected by the PTR, like current live version of the game. Was the previous version. So for unless this is played in the PTR, which is not. So for Eggs to 3-0 Maples, like that's pretty huge. That's a huge win for Eggs, but that also shows the current state of play of Maples as well. Which doesn't bode well for the power rankings, let me say that. So GG well played. Eggs has claimed the series. That leads us into the ZVZ. Solar versus Raynor, and Solar does take down Raynor 3-0. Strong showing here by Solar. Raynor did get his revenge afterwards, of course, in the GSLCK, but here in the Basilisk Big Man Bounce, Solar does claim the win over Raynor. GG. GG well played. With that, congratulations to Solar, JMac, and Eggs. 3 Zerg champions in the Basilisk Big Bang Bouts. That was a sign of things to come. The forewarning. It was a sign of the patch on the horizon. GG. GG well played. Congratulations to our 3 players. That leads us into our OC events of the week. OC Elite Rising Star number 19. We wrapped up and we have our champion. We have our Rising Star, Shameless, who took down GG Machine 3-1. Then we had Art have a crazy run in lower bracket. Art did beat Art, true. Art beat Art 2-1. Took down Fian 3-2, won all the way to the ace match, and took down GG Machine 3-1 as well. I was favoring GG Machine, but he got adepted the hell out. There were a lot of adepts in that series. A lot of Glaive adepts, a lot of dead workers. GG Machine, he was torn apart, and Art was the player to advance onto the grand finals. He had a rough showing in those finals, though. Shameless did have a dominant 3-0 over Art. It was a one-sided finals, but despite that, Art had a really strong showing getting to the finals. All the way from the lower bracket, he got knocked down early on in the tournament by Moja of all players. Moja brought him down. And Art, he 2-0'd Sebestis, he 2-0'd Jumi, 2-0'd Rebellion, 2-1 Art, 3-2 Fiant, and then 3-1 GG Machine. So strong showing there. Congratulations to Art for making it to the finals, and a shout out to Shameless for winning the event itself. GG. GG well played. That leads us here into the OC King of the Hill, number 253. is a weekly King of the Hill style format where the winner stays on, the loser is eliminated. And we did begin with Geralt versus Nickrat. Nickrat takes down Geralt 1-0, takes down Ledlix, goes on a 2-game win streak before being knocked out by young Yakov. Yakov takes down Nickrat. Yakov takes down Christiana, takes down Hon Mono, 3-game win streak before being knocked out by Art himself, our recent OSC Rising Stars finalist. Takes down Young Yakov. Then Percival goes on a tear, the biggest win streak here. Percival takes down Art, takes down Chem, Fiant, Mana, Geralt as well. Strong showing there by Percival, 5 wins in a row. And then Art gets his revenge. And this is a crazy result here. Art takes down Percival, which is huge, takes down Christiana, Jumi, and Creator as well. Huge win here. Again, we were giving a lot of praise to Art earlier for his performance in the Rising Star tournaments, and even here takes down some big names like Creator and Percival as well. Very impressive showing there by Art. GG. GG, well played. That leads us into our Open Cups. Our Open tournaments here for the week. Up first is going to be the Wardy CB Monday. Now, bearing in mind, the Wardy Monday was in the previous version of the game, not in the current version. So in this event, we did have a Clem. Clem, he 2-0'd Ryung, he 2-0'd Percival, and then he got taken out by Max Pax, 3-2 in the grand finals. Showing at a Max Pax, he took down Björn, 2-1, took down Hero, and then, again, in that ace match, did take down Clem as well. GG, well played. It's been a while since Max Pax has won an Open Cup, so very well done here to Max Pax. GG. GG, well played. Max Pax claim the win. Another result that occurred earlier in the bracket that I don't want to gloss over. Percival 2-0'd Rogue. Big win there for Percival. And Christiana 2-0'd Classic, which is also huge. Like we had some crazy upsets earlier in the brackets leading into the semifinals. That leads us into the Monday Night Weekly. This was also in the PTR edition of the tournament, or sorry, of the game. This was in the PTR. Here we had a dominant showing here by Zerg players, which is, I mean, you can see the difference between the What is Even Monday, where all the Zerg players got knocked down in the round 16, and then bam, cut to ZVZ finals. With Solar, he 2-0's Björn, he 2-0's Clem, he 2-0's Young Yakov, and then he 2-0's Yakov in the grand finals. So strong showing there by Solus, looked dominant against the Terran opponents. Likewise, Yakov, he 2-1'd Classic, and then he 2-0'd Classic. That is huge. Like, that is, I would say, the patch in full effect with young Yakov being able to take down the second best Protoss player in the world. Like, that's crazy. That's the kind of version of the game. As Yakov, he pops off, he 2-0's Classic, 2-1's Classic, then eventually does fall to Solar in the finals. GG. GG, well played. That leads us into the Sparkling Tuning Up, the STC. This was the first tournament on the current live patched version of the game. We hold that mantle, Pappy. The first event here we had Shin. Shin, he took down Shino 2-0, took down Young Yakov 2-0 as well. Yakov took down Björn earlier. That was the first big upset of the night, is Björn got taken out in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, we had Hero. Hero, he 2-0's Fusion Machine. He did drop a map to Railgun, by the way. He 2-0's Percival. And then we had Shin versus Hero, the grand finals, went all the way to the ace match, and Shin takes down Hero 3-2. Honestly, it was a really fun series, a really fun matchup. I will say, though, that Hero, he was freestyling. He himself did say that he didn't really have any experience in the PTR, for good reason. If you remember, because I don't want this to be misconstrued, we kept trying to emphasize this, that Hero didn't have any experience in the PTR. But the reason for that is because Hero was focusing on the live version of the game because of Masters of the Game. Like MOG, like the big offline event in France was happening and he was going to be a part of that. So he was focusing and fixating on very real offline events that were happening, less so on the PTR instead. So that's why Hero wasn't really active in the PTR. It was more focused on the live version. And then bam, suddenly PTR goes live and it's like, oh, that's it. Yeah, again, it's crazy that it went live before Masters of the Game, before the play of offline events. Crazy. And with that, GG will play. Shin does take down Hero 3-2. That leads us into this morning's tournament. This was the second event of the live patched version of the game. Here we had Solar. Solar, he takes down Björn 3-0, takes down Greeno 2-0, takes down Clem 3-0 in the grand finals. Again, a strong showing there by Solar. We did cover both of these events, of course, on our channel. Solar versus Björn was much more quote-unquote standard, with Björn struggling to play macro against Solar and struggling in the mid-game. In the finals, it was Clem with non-stop all-ins. Non-stop aggression, non-stop all-ins versus Solar, trying to kill Solar before the mid-game, before Solar got out of hand. and was unable to do so. So solo, he was able to dominate in standard, more macro-ish games against Bjorn, and he was able to thrive likewise against more aggressive plays from Clem as well. So we got to see a wide berth of TVZ in this morning's cast of Pegasus Cup. And with that, GG will play. Congratulations to Solar. And again, there are more tournaments to come, of course. I believe this week there is no Kung Fu Cup, but we do have Doyo Cup starting up tomorrow. So Doyo Cup is going to be the next big event on the current version of the game. If you want to check out some of the other tournaments out there, if you want to sign up and take part, then you can do so via the sign-up list, ! Sign-up list in the chat. We have the RSL qualifiers, we have the Wardy TV Mondays, Kung Fu Cups, Tuna Cups, Pegastar Cups, Monday Night Weeklies, and many more tournaments all on the sign-up list. Do check it out. The big thing, of course, as we mentioned, RSL qualifiers. They're on the horizon, and remember, the RSL finals will be at BlizzCon. So that's going to be huge. Hopefully, by the time we get there, we get some hot fixes, we get some patches. We are hopefully in a better place in regards to current StarCraft. Hopefully. So in chat, as is the game we'll be playing on the previous patch. I know that they're thinking and maybe even working on a mod that will revert all the changes to the previous patch. So I know that's something that they're working on, but I cannot confirm whether they will be able to pull that off or not. But I know that they're in talks of doing that. They're in talks. But otherwise, again, you can check out, of course, the RSL qualifiers that'll be taking place next week. Otherwise, our next broadcast is going to be tomorrow with Doyo Cup. Again, next 4 days, non-stop Doyo Cup action. A lot of content, a lot of StarCraft, a lot of nostalgia is going to be taking place. Likewise, if you want to support us on the CranKy Ducklings, you can do so via Patreon, ! Patreon in the chat. You get a link to our Patreon channel. Our Patreon does fund our tournaments on a regular basis, so you can help us grow our events via Patreon if you wish. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much for the support. Again, it's been a pretty intense week of StarCraft because of the patch going live and the current state of the game. I'm hopeful that maybe things can be looking a little bit better coming into the next couple of weeks, where we can get some hotfixes, some amendments, and some changes made. As I said earlier, I don't believe we'll be seeing any major changes made. I feel like for the most part, they're probably going to commit to the worker change, but I can see them tweaking numbers here and there when it comes to other aspects of the game. And we'll see what becomes of StarCraft, and we'll see what becomes of the mod as well. As I mentioned, like there is current works on. Currently there's a mod in the works to revert a bunch of these changes and to play on the previous patch instead. Whether that comes to fruition, again, time will tell. Time will tell. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much for the support. We do appreciate it. Shout out to Kerr for handling the production, of course. And we'll see you guys next week for some more PondCast. Once again, discussing more StarCraft and catching up with the current state of the game. That'll be us next week. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time. And take care. We'll see you tomorrow for Doyo Cup. Until then, ciao. Ciao, papi ciao. Hasta luego.